Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Jonny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. Good afternoon, beer geeks. A very happy Friday to you. I'm assuming you're all as fucking cold as I am.
Well, on that note, Jonny, I got some interesting stats for you. Wednesday night in the UK was the coldest night in 25 years.
Interesting.
Very interesting, right? It was minus 22 in Braemar in Aberdeenshire. And that was the coldest temperature recorded since 1995. 1995 was the year that grunge music broke across the planet. So there you go. There's some cold facts and some hot music facts for you.
That was excellent.
Right?
I reckon the drop in temperature was caused by the reaction to this week's video, seeing as it happened on Wednesday.
Is it? I believe. I believe so. Do you think that a lot more people were brewing lagers to take advantage of the cold weather? Maybe outside après lagers. Not après. That means after. Outside lagers. What do you reckon?
Interestingly, I was talking to a brewery who are about to start an outdoor oak lager project.
Ooh.
And they said that it would have been perfect to do it this week, except that Brexit had fucked over the import of their barrels.
Damn. That sucks.
So, yeah, that's not ideal, and now they might not have the right temperatures to do the project this year. But they're hoping that this cold snap can last.
Wow. I hope so too, maybe. Do I hope so? No. It's nice when it snows, isn't it? I tried to go sledding the other day, but by the time I got to the park, all of the kids had turned the hills into just sort of poo brown mud slopes, and it was very upsetting. I've still got my childhood sled, which is bright red, made of plastic, and still.
How's the plastic ones lasted? They never last a day.
It's amazing. It's still got a Box Fresh made in Sweden logo on the front of it, so you know it's good.
Swedish
right?
Plastic.
Swedish plastics.
Yeah.
Those guys know how to do snow. It's still going, mate. I went down one slope on whenever that was, Tuesday or Monday. Can't remember now. I think it was Monday. Who knows? It was good fun, but it was a small slope that the other kids hadn't made opportunity of yet, because it was less of a headline slope in the park. But my chunky momentum took me down at a great speed.
That's of great relief to me.
Right? Another thing, Jonny. Today is a palindrome. This doesn't happen very often. It's 12022021, and that's if you're English and you have your month before your date in the month.
Yeah, the Americans are confused.
The Americans are confused, but they've had lots of palindromes since January. They had a stint of, I believe, 10 days. I think it was a stint of 10 days in January. Consecutive days which were palindromic, which is kind of cool as well. But I wonder whether these sort of strange events of the world and all the kind of mathematical things are aligning.
Bradley, what's happened this week? Have you discovered the internet this week?
Yeah.
And you've just been reading it, or you found BBC News and you're just clicking the most reds. What's going on?
I think what it is, I just got up a bit earlier and I I just
Making the most of the day.
Yeah, I just watched a few things and I was like, yeah, I like numbers and stuff. Also, in better news,
Oh my days.
the pubs on the Isle of Man are open, Johnny, and they have been since the beginning of February, which I didn't realise. But there you go. I just heard that
Hey,
today.
that's great.
That's cool, right? They've got no...
I'm really happy for them.
Well, the place is called, I believe the capital is called Douglas, which is a very sort of masculine name for a town. I just think of Michael Douglas or Kurt Douglas. So I'm like...
Those are men.
They're manly men, right? So I was like, the name of the town's Douglas, and all the pubs are open. And I can't remember how many thousand people live on the Isle of Man, which is the only place in the UK to have the pubs open. It's a Isle of Man isn't. I can't remember. It's got a funny definition in terms of what it is being part.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure they're technically part of the UK.
It's a principality or something wacky. I can't remember what it is, but it's kind of cool. They've had no cases there.
That's for you to read tomorrow morning on the internet.
Right. So one more thing, Johnny. Tell us about your tweet last night. You tweet a lot, but you said, I'll quote you.
I was going to go, which one?
I've had a fucking shit day and 8 German Kellerbiers in the fridge. Let's do some maths.
Yeah, the answer to that to that mathematical question is 5.
5 beers. You made it to 5, and you don't sound like you're hanging either, which is pretty good.
No, I'm doing okay. I mean, I wouldn't call them session beers, Kellerbiers. They're all around about 5%. But I started early. I had a big hearty meal. I can recommend Franconian Kellerbiers with bolognese.
Oh,
nice
great stuff! Yeah, the sweetness would be brilliant. Actually, I reckon. Yum.
Yeah, it was really good. But yeah, I had a terrible day. Basically, I'm trying to buy a house, and as everybody knows, it never goes to plan. So I turned to drink because that's both the answer to and the cause of all of life's problems.
Oh, dude. Well, I hope it's okay. We haven't talked about that, but I thought everything was going hunky-dory, so I hope it still is pretty much.
Hey, fingers crossed. If people stop being so goddamn like people, maybe we'd get somewhere in this world. But there we go. Let's talk about this week's video, unless you've got anything else that you've learned from this thing called the internet.
I've probably got other stuff too, but I'll keep it in the bag for another time. There you go. I'll let you off lightly today.
It felt like you let me off. So this week's video was our attempt at starting a conversation around what the best brewery in the world is, but more than that, we were trying to start a conversation about what makes a great brewery.
Yeah, exactly.
So throughout the first half of it, we discussed a couple of our favourite breweries and why we think they're great, whether it was the beer or the vibe or the people or the impact that it's had, or how many Alsatians you were attacked by on the way in, which is what happened at Kautske. And then about halfway through, we cut away to another bit of filming because I was editing the video almost a couple of months later, and decided that we'd done quite a shit job with it. Yeah. Well,
we'd gone down a sort of very America rabbit hole, haven't we? And we just gone into ourselves and indulged our kind of love. And I think what it is, because we haven't been able to travel, and we haven't been able to travel with the channel in over a year, pretty much. You did a bit of harvest stuff, but I haven't really gone anywhere. We were just looking back with kind of rose-tinted eyes at the kind of the glory days, pre-pandemic, where we were road tripping across America and just letting our hair down and just having shits and giggles and meeting great people and all the rest of it. And it's very easy to just think that is the best beer experience ever and the best breweries ever. And potentially they are. But we'd kind of gone down that rabbit hole and totally forgotten about some of our homegrown stuff and sort of other places around the world.
I'd put it more down to the fact that it was the 4th video we'd filmed that day because we were cramming it in before the world started burning again. And in all the other previous videos, we'd been talking about those breweries, and I think we just got tunnel vision.
Yeah.
But also the sort of the rose tinted of our last great. Well, actually, not our last great trip. Our last great trip was to St. Pete's, and Green Bench probably should have got a mention in that because I think their beers were just unbelievable, and everything we brought back was unbelievable.
Yeah, man.
So
Especially
survived the
yeah,
the lack of context.
yeah, and I think especially meeting Chris out there as well at the brewery, and just him being a champion for good in the world, and that part of the world, and sort of putting a spotlight on the history of that particular place, and just sort of owning a symbol which was kind of a bad thing, and was
Yeah,
he
he co-opted it. He took back the green bench.
Yeah, very cool. Great guy.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that video in the description box in
Yeah.
case people haven't seen it, because it's an amazing story about the first black owner of a brewery naming his brewery after the green bench, which black people were famously not allowed to sit on in St. Petersburg. So yeah, it's a super cool brewery. He probably could have been mentioned. But what was interesting, because the reason we went back mainly is because we forgot to mention Colonel, who are one of the best breweries in the world, had a huge impact. You know, I think as bigger impact as Brewdog have on actual inspiration for people to start breweries in the UK.
Big time.
And it's interesting that we missed them despite them being a few miles from your house and started talking about breweries on the other side of the world, because, like you say, I think everybody has rose-tinted views of breweries that are elsewhere, and wishing that, we sit there and go, I wish I lived near Treehouse. And in fact, I said that on our Discord forum earlier this week, and then sort of caught myself going, but do I? Because we have Cloudwater, Verdant, Daya, Northern Monk. We have these breweries that make New England IPAs just as good as Treehouse now.
Yes.
So why are we still obsessed with the ones on the other side of the world?
It's all just, it's locked up in the imagination, isn't it? And the sort of projecting feelings onto places and special objects and beers, and I just think there's always a magic in something when it's invented in a place. Everyone is going to want a pilgrimage over there and see what is so special about a place. What's the terroir that allowed some nutters.
That's my favourite pronunciation I've ever heard.
Terroir. I think it's great. But there's also, like the grass is always greener on the other side. The hops are always stickier or, hoppier elsewhere. But, we're so lucky in the UK to have such amazing beers being made in all these world-class breweries. So, yeah, I don't know why we're preaching. Everyone knows that already. We were the ones that forgot it, and we corrected ourselves.
But I think we're all guilty of it at some point. It's why I don't have anything against trading sort of juice for juice. I only get annoyed when we're trading lambic for juice mostly. But it is interesting that we'll spend hundreds of dollars on shipping to get beer that is of a lower quality because it's spent two weeks at sea than something we could get just down the road. And I think I always have to give myself a little reality check when I catch myself nearly doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, let's dive into the comments, because there is a comment I've got that's vaguely related to that. I haven't replied to this person yet, so I apologise, but I will. And it's a comment from BearDown2489.
Great name.
And he says, there are 8,000 breweries in America and all of your choices are incredible and worthy. The crazy thing is, we could easily give shout-outs to 300 to 500 stellar and well-rounded breweries in the country that you could call world-class. And that would be like 5% of the nation's options. Great point. Like, America has hundreds of world-class breweries, as we discovered on the Rate Beer list. Like, there was nobody there that didn't deserve to be there. There are a couple of people that did deserve to be there that weren't. But that just proves the point. It's so hard to pick. But he then goes on to say, I feel like innovation is almost done. It's time for American breweries to truly refine their craft and continue to strengthen their relationships with their own communities. Which I definitely agree with, and I've definitely seen America start to look at traditional styles, to start to turn slightly inward and focus on the products they already have. And indeed to focus again on core beers, because the COVID pandemic has forced breweries to focus on more on sort of supermarket and liquor store sales, which has meant going with brands that already have a name. So there has been a move towards sort of flagship brands, or at least variations of seasonal beers that people recognise. But the main reason I want to bring up Bear Down's comment is because his last thing, he says, strengthen their relationship with their own communities. And I would argue that the comments in general on this video say that that's already happened, because most of the comments we had were from people saying something like, you're going to think I haven't travelled much, but actually it's my local brewery.
Yeah.
And then they list the local brewery. And we've had that from people all over the world in the comments. All of them going, no, my favourite brewery is my local brewery.
Yeah.
So I feel like breweries are quite good at reaching their communities.
Do you think that's a bit of? I'm no doubt some of these breweries are going to be amazing, and I'm excited to discover them if we haven't already tried them. Do you think some of that is going to be sort of hometown glory, like rhetoric kind of thing, supporting your local team? Or do you think it's genuinely they've tried the rest, theirs is the best?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think they've gone to lots of other places, tried other beer and gone, it's no better than home. And my brewery at home makes, not only makes incredible beer, but has a wonderful vibe. And I know the people there and I feel comfortable there. And I think, that should be a credit to a lot of the community, the breweries in those spaces that they've managed to create something that feels so welcoming. The darker side to it is that, of course, breweries are mostly located in certain areas and are often priced to the point where certain parts of that community can't access it. And that's where I definitely agree with Bear Down 2489, that we can do better at reaching wider communities, rather than being part of this sort of narrative of going into an area where they can afford to rent and gentrifying it. I think there's definitely work to be done there. But I think it's really nice that, the opposite of the grass is always greener is also lots of people, or even the same people, maybe if somebody asked us who our favourite brewery was, rather than us making the video and asking the question, we might have said Colonel in that context.
Yeah.
Because if an American asked, we'd probably want to say a British brewery. We'd be like, hey, well, Colonel, Cloudwater, maybe even Daya at this point. They make great varieties of beers. They have oh boy, maybe I am hungover.
Philosophical
Philosophies that we agree with and can sort of buy into. I thought it was a really interesting comment, and it was really great to see so many other comments that were talking about their local breweries being their favourites.
You just raised an interesting aside there, which was you kind of touched upon breweries gentrifying areas. Traditionally, it was artists and creatives that would move to an area, a cheap area that was sort of undervalued, in terms financially or culturally, and they would bring change to an area. They'd make it a more vibrant, exciting place. They'd open new businesses, coffee shops, all that kind of stuff. Do you think that we've reached a point now where breweries have become part of a wave of gentrification in towns and cities around the world? And is that a good thing? I guess it's just a state.
There's academic papers on whether gentrification is a good thing or not, and it depends how it's done. But I think definitely, particularly in America, there have been lots of controversial examples of breweries moving to cheap areas for the cheap rent, former working collar areas, and they're not actually doing anything to service the community that already live there.
Right, that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? It's if it brings real value and puts back into the community that it's part of now, or if it's just a sort of a force for taking over and pricing people out of the area and all the rest of it. But you would hope that kind of action happening brings people and communities close together. I'm a bit of a hippie or whatever, and I would say I'm a bit of a artistic, creative person. So I always look at it as a positive thing, but I can totally understand how it can be a negative thing as well. But I think it's interesting how now beer and brewing has become part of that culture. I think that's a cool thing. I think it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think it's a real opportunity for breweries to show that it can be done right. And if you're going to move to an area that doesn't have a lot of money, then you've got to come up with an offer that can welcome those people in. in America, it's a little bit easier to do because beer isn't as expensive as it is here. But it's got to be, if beer wants to be this grassroots and ethical movement that we've always claimed it is, you can't just plonk yourself down in a warehouse and start selling beer to, super rich white people from the other side of town. Like, that's not actually helping the location at all.
No. I do wonder if we'll get to the point where realtors and estate agents will be putting on their listings, instead of close to coffee shops and bougie kind of...
they already are, Brad. They're already saying good local breweries.
Do you reckon?
Yeah,
I've never seen that,
yeah,
but that's interesting.
I've seen it on my house hunting.
Huh. Wow, there you go.
Yeah, it's definitely a draw for people. Maybe they saw me coming.
Yeah, they'd aimed it at you.
Took one look at me and went, yeah, I'll tell him about the local craft brewery. Probably used the term craft ales, which is just sends a shiver down my spine.
Lovely.
What comment did you dig out, Brad?
Yeah, so I had a couple, but the one I liked particularly was from Ben Pagnelli. He said, I'm absolutely loving Brad's shirt. Milton Glaser was not only a great graphic designer, but a true New York hero. Having been one of the founders of New York Magazine and the Underground Gourmet column, which has since become Grub Street, he got the idea for the Brooklyn Brewery logo from the old Brooklyn Dodgers logo. How cool is that? He also is the one who convinced Steve Hindy to change the name from Brooklyn Eagle, not a bad name, but not as catchy. He is most remembered for two things, his Dylan poster from the 60s, and of course the I Love New York logo. Now, I own the Dylan poster, and I own numerous I Love New York things. And he ended the comment with, wait a second, you guys are selling that? Which I'm guessing is in a New York accent, because he's espousing greatly about New York. Yes, we are selling that. I culturally appropriated the sort of iconography of Brooklyn Brewery, their branding, and sort of made a homage T-shirt to the great man Milton Glaser, who died last year. So that's our little kind of personal take and homage to I think the granddaddy of beer branding. He's a ledge. So yeah, buy one of them if you want. We've got our Teespring web shop, which has got all kinds of stuff on there, and it's great. I love it. I'm wearing one right now, Johnny. How about you?
Yes.
Yes.
No, I'm not. I can't lie to you, Bradley.
Oh.
I'm wearing a big ass jumper because it's freezing.
It is cold.
Well, thank you for noticing in the comments there, and yeah, I'll put a link to our Teespring shop there where we've got that. We've got what else have we got? We've got some unique designs by Brad. We've got our Be Wiser hoodie.
Exactly, Be Wiser. We've got a Black Sabbath one, which is sort of beer savant.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. Snit Happens,
which is about kind of just that, life deals you a bad one or whatever, but it's also a cheeky little pun on Czech drinking culture. There's all sorts on there, mate. I think it's shaping up really good. I've got lots more ideas that I need to talk to you about, which I wanna make as well. So it's an ever evolving shop that's going to keep being added to over time. So hopefully there'll be something for everybody on there.
Cool. Next, we've got a question in this week, a recorded question. If you want to send in your question, you can do so by emailing a recorded video file or just a written email to craftbeerboys@gmail.com. This week we have a question from Sean Brewer, who he sent us a question before, so thank you for keeping this part of the podcast going, Sean. Let's hear what Sean wants to know.
Hi, Jonny and Brad. Sean Brewer here, one of your patrons, and I have a question. If you could choose any dessert and any beer to match with the dessert, of course, what would that dessert be and what would the beer be? For me, it's got to be that slice of chocolate cake from the film Matilda, paired with an imperial stout, which really brings out that chocolatey goodness. Okay, thanks guys. Loving beer.
Loved his love and beer sign off there.
Ah, it's great to hear, wasn't it?
That's Craft Beer Channel approved lingo right there. So nice one, dude.
Bradley, I think you should go first because you're the man with the sweet tooth.
Well, I'm trying to think of the beer I'd match with it, but I definitely have a Portuguese pastel de nata, or however you say it. So a kind of creme brulee custard tart in a super flaky pastry that has a sort of very sugary Maillard reactiony crusty top with maybe cinnamon on it, depending on where you go. The sort of burnt sugar thing. I'm thinking of drinking it with a litre of a litre of something sweet like a Kellerbier or something like that, or something that's very very rich like chocolate, like imperial stout or something. I haven't got a specific beer.
That particular flavour, there's so much you can do with what is essentially vanilla custard in flaky pastry.
Right.
You could definitely. I think maybe a Kellerbier wouldn't quite be sweet enough. I'd go more Doppelbock, or I'd go for a Scotch ale that is just like liquid caramel. That could be really nice.
Yeah, that'll work.
Nice. Another thing you could do is go a little bit tart, maybe like a Berliner Weiss with like maybe raspberry. That'd be really nice to add like a kind of coulis on the vanilla.
So it could give it a bit more of a kind of yogurt, well, not yogurty vibe, but kind of like a bit of sharpness to the.
Yeah, just like a squeeze of lemon. Sweetness. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. A bit of acidity that always wakes the flavour, doesn't it? So that's a good shout.
Yeah.
Nice.
Those would probably be my tips for a pastel de nata. I love traditional British puddings. My favourite pudding is it's probably a sticky toffee pudding.
Oof, nice.
And I mean that's such a tricky thing to match with because it's so sweet.
With custard
so
or ice
decadent.
cream, Johnny?
Custard.
Custard.
Definitely
Not custard and ice cream. That's
what?
the way to go.
That's
surely.
mad. Hot custard and then cold ice cream. They're both vanilla flavour. This is Bradley.
The hot custard and the cold ice cream, they fight each other. And then it all is a party in your mouth.
Oh, my business with a Philistine. With that, I think probably a Scotch ale would be quite good too, but it'd be quite overwhelming. Maybe something a bit barrel-aged, add a bit of booziness to it. You could add a chocolatey bit of naughtiness, maybe some whiskey naughtiness with a bourbon barrel-aged stout. Yeah.
I reckon
that could be
a whiskey
really nice.
would be great.
Talking of chocolate cake, though, to go back to Sean, my favourite match with a chocolate cake is a Creek.
Nice.
To try and make a bit of like a gatto, Black Forest gatto
vibes. Yeah, man. I'm into that.
I think that really works, particularly like the sweeter, boozier Creeks, like the Erd Beer Cell one, which is I think 7.5%, and tastes of like marzipan and cherry. And
we haven't done this as a video, have we? This is a good video.
Pudding and beer matching probably would work.
We've sort of maybe touched upon it.
Yeah, maybe we should do a video. We haven't really focused on sweet stuff and matching, because that is the hardest thing to get right, because beer is often bitter and dry.
Yeah.
So maybe that is a video idea. So thank you, Sean, for the inspiration. I now really want a sticky toffee pudding. That might have to be the weekend project, seeing as we can't go out unless we're on the Isle of fucking Man.
I want a half a dozen pastel de natas. That's what I want.
Half a dozen?
They're so small and delicious.
I was saying, I think you're selling yourself short there, buddy.
Well, yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll have a baker's dozen then. There you go.
There you go. 13, blimey. Cool, well, that's all we've got time for this week. Thank you, Sean. Brad and I are now going to eat ourselves to death and get diabetes. And we'll see you on Wednesday. We've got the final episode of our best, what were we calling it? The World Series. Best of in the world videos. And then we are homebrewing, hopefully with some very special guests. So that could be a lot of fun in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Check out the links in the descriptions box to buy our merch and obviously the videos we've referenced and this week's video. And we'll catch you guys on Wednesday. The Bubble Podcast is brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's Craft Beer channel. Head to youtube.com/the Craft Beer Channel to watch this week's video and over 400 more exciting episodes. If you love what we do, please do subscribe and even join our Patreon at patreon.com/craftbeerchannel. Love and beer.